I am Tyler, because we're going to talk about a couple different things. Is event marketing even worth it? Like, spoiler alert, of course, event marketing is worth it. Then we'll get into some of the challenges that event marketers face. We'll look at a customer case study. So we'll see when we give in the context of what this customer did, hopefully it'll match what some of you have gone through if you are event marketers. So we have a lot of people here who host their own events. Backstage is perfect for that because it's a unified event management tool. We'll look at what a customer of ours used to do before they started with Backstage. Then we'll get into Zoho Backstage. So we'll look at a demo. We'll look at some of the details of Backstage in a couple of screenshots. So I asked earlier, is event marketing worth it? The answer is yes. This is actually kind of biased. So this is from the 2025 State of Event Management Report. They asked a bunch of event organizers, are events crucial to your organization's success? 80% of them said yes. These are event organizers who are answering this, so I don't know if they are people that you can necessarily trust when they're saying that, but there's a lot more things that go into this that can kind of contribute to your thoughts and feelings on if events are valuable or not. 78% of these same event organizers consider in-person events the most impactful marketing channel. Email marketing is extremely important. I would say that events are probably more important than social media marketing for most people, because most people don't really go viral. It's hard to argue that it's more important than email marketing, but I think this top statistic we can all agree with. 84% of event organizers either agree or strongly agree that in-person events are an effective way to build and grow a community. I don't think that's like an unpopular opinion. Of course, getting in touch with people, actually talking to them in real life, saying hi, showing that you're human, just generally building community is something that events are really good at. And then if we want to actually talk about dollars, 48% of these event organizers reported generating between 200K and $1 million from their events in 2024. So that's a pretty significant cash influx for a lot of event organizers. And not just from actual statistics, we can look at some of the other benefits of events. I mentioned this before, community building. That's what we're trying to do today with Zoholics. We're trying to give people a community where they can come together, network with other users so the users can help each other out, help them learn so that they can find more success with our products, and just generally become a fan. So community building is a great aspect of events that I would highly recommend people, incorporate into their events, like networking, things like that. Lead generation, you can obviously have lead generation events like networking conferences would be one way to do it. Industry conferences, product launches. If you were like a large company and you actually have the cachet to have a product launch, go ahead and do that for a lead generation event. And then just general brand awareness. We travel around all the time. That's part of my job. My job is traveling around, like going to events, giving presentations at these events. And oftentimes we meet people who say they've never heard of Zoho. And events are a great way to get people who have never heard of you. Now I'm putting this little marketing funnel out here. We don't need to talk about it all that much, but what this is here to show you is that events actually fit in throughout your marketing funnel. And there's a lot more types of events than you might initially think if you hadn't really, sat down and ideated all the different types of events that there are. So for awareness, we can have a product launch or a press release. Again, for smaller companies, maybe this isn't feasible. Like if you're, it makes sense if you're Apple and you're unleashing the iPhone or whatever, but if you're Joe's Coffee Shop, you're probably not going to hold an event or a press release to say that you just added decaf to your menu. So that doesn't really make sense for the small business, but for large businesses, awareness events like press releases are huge. You can obviously host online events and webinars, though. That's one of the really cool things that you can do within Zoho Backstage is you can manage all of the registrations from within Backstage and then just cast everything through Backstage. So you can do online events using Zoho Backstage or Zoho Webinar. And then there are a lot of other types of events here that we don't necessarily need to go through. Now, event marketing is one of those things that's really interesting, actually. Before I got into events, I honestly didn't think event organizing was that hard. I just kind of thought you book a venue and then you show up and you give your session, and that's it. Maybe you offer food, so you call a caterer. How hard is that? But it turns out to be much, much more difficult than you would think if you actually just take a second to sit down. So here we have our little iceberg, and we can see the scene. The scene is what it looks like from the outside. So for you as attendees, you see the sessions, insightful, but you see the networking, you see the food, but there's a lot that you don't see. You don't see all the budgeting that went into this. You don't see how we managed all of the registrations. You don't see how we even got the badges done. That was actually a big coordination effort earlier with the venue, was getting printers that we could use that would work with our badges. Checking in was a huge endeavor. Then there's speaker management. We have 12 tracks. There's like 70 speakers. So how are we managing all of this? Well, we're using Backstage. And without Backstage, we'd be using a bunch of disparate tools. So I just mentioned a lot of the reasons why event planning is really tough, but the main one is just juggling between multiple tools. We'll take a look at this customer case study in a second from Action Coach UK. But what they used to do was they used to use 3 or 4 different tools when they would host their events. So that they would have stuff in Excel spreadsheets, and then they would use a different service to do their ticketing, and then they would have to bring those together, and they would have to manage their attendees and their sessions and all of their speakers in Excel spreadsheets, and then they would build a standalone site every year, and they would have to double update everything, because when something gets updated in the spreadsheet, it now has to be updated on the site, and things just end up taking a really long time. One of the other things that makes event marketing and management so difficult is the amount of changes that we've had in the last 7 years. In 2018, everything was nice. Everything was cool. We held our in-person events. We just ran some ticketing, and then people showed up, and it was that easy. And then something happened in 2020. I don't remember what it was, but we had to switch to virtual events. Everyone switched to virtual events. Mostly people switched to Zoom. Some people switched to Meeting. Some people switched to Zoho Webinar, and so people switched to virtual events. Then, in 2022, the world started opening up again after COVID, and we switched to hybrid events. So we had events where people could come in person, or we could also stream and people could watch those in real time. And then finally, we have all-in-one events that are happening today, where not only are we streaming, we're also offering links for different tracks. Then we're having people come in person. Then we're having different ticketing classes for different zones at our event. So these things become very complex. So now we're going to look at that customer case study. We're going to look at Action Coach UK. They are a customer of ours. They previously used multiple different tools, like I had mentioned previously, to plan, organize, and host BizX. BizX is their largest event of the year. So what they used to do was all of their agenda, their session details, their speaker details, everything else like that, their registrations were done in Excel spreadsheets. And if anyone here uses Excel, not even Excel spreadsheets, just spreadsheets extensively, and they have multiple people working on spreadsheets, those things can become pretty monstrous pretty quick. And then if you have multiple people typing in on them, the format changes because everyone types in differently. And then the thing just becomes, it's just like, it's a travesty, essentially. So they needed a place to consolidate all of that information. They also managed all their ticket sales via an application called TryBooking. So their session details from their Excel spreadsheet didn't integrate with their ticket sales. And then when they built a standalone website for the conference every year, they had 3 different tools from 3 different vendors, all of which weren't designed to work together. And then finally, they had difficulty visualizing the arrangements holistically. So when they went to sell space for exhibitors or sponsors, they couldn't just provide a map to say, hey, here's where our breakfast area is, here's where your exhibit will be. You'll get a lot of foot traffic because they have to pass it for lunch. They would just have to describe it to them. That's not a very good way to sell sponsorship and exhibitor areas. So what they did was they switched to Backstage. They found it exceptionally user-friendly. They can now manage their entire event with one application. So they build their site using Backstage. They run all of their ticketing. They print all their badges. They design the badges. They live stream everything through Backstage. So it's all on one consolidated event management platform that we'll take a look at in a sec. And then a really important note is that all the data from their ticket sales went directly into their CRM. So they were able to follow up with everyone in real time. So when someone registered for an event, all of that data went into their CRM. The CRM rep could call them. The sales rep who works out of the CRM could call them and say, hey, I saw that you went to this event because it's showing up in your record in the CRM. And we have a testimonial from Craig Jackson. He's the UK partnership director. He says, to anyone else out there thinking of putting on an event, no matter what size of event you're looking to put on, it can cater to them all, and the value for money is phenomenal. So that's an amazing testimonial. He's just a user of ours. He's not a paid spokesman or anything like that. And now what we're going to do is hop into Backstage. We're going to take a look at this, and we're going to contrast this with what Action Coach would have had to do. Backstage looks relatively similar to some of our other applications. We have all of our modules here on the left. So this is the way that you're going to navigate through the application. And on our homepage on this dashboard, we have a bunch of different reports that are just making it easier for us to monitor the performance of our event and a lot of the other metrics of our events. But what you're typically going to interact with is this quick actions section here. Because what this is going to do is allow you to navigate through all of the different modules a lot more effectively. So we're going to start with this agenda feature, because this is something that Action Coach UK could have used heavily. So I mentioned before that all of their agenda information was in an Excel spreadsheet. So when they had really big events, they had multiple different tracks or multiple different meeting rooms, all with different speakers in each meeting room. And if they wanted to schedule someone in a slot in a specific meeting room, they had to check all of the other meeting rooms to figure out if that person wasn't already speaking. That takes a lot of time. One of the ways that Backstage makes this really easy to avoid is we have this little feature here on the bottom, this speaker time overlap feature. This is essentially a warning. So this speaker time overlap feature, what this is showing is if a speaker is scheduled in two different tracks at the same time, it tells you, hey, I wouldn't run this event right now because you're going to have a dude running from one track to another halfway through the session. That's not a good way to schedule your agenda. This feature obviously wouldn't exist in a spreadsheet right out of the box. So instead of now having to check every single person every time you're scheduling them, you can simply just put them into the agenda in Backstage, and Backstage will tell you if there are any conflicts of schedule. Another really cool feature of this agenda, and this really isn't that mind-blowing, but it makes such a big difference when we're talking about in comparison to an Excel spreadsheet. With the Excel spreadsheet, when they updated that, let's say they had a lot of stakeholders in the spreadsheet who are updating the sessions, all that does is complete one step. All that does is update the spreadsheet. Now, whoever's designing the website has to receive an email or a link to the spreadsheet to then update the website. So we're now updating things 2 times. What this allows you to do is you're able to hold all of your agenda information in the exact application that also has the website in it. So anytime you push an update, I mean edit it, anytime you edit one of these agenda sessions, that will show up on the website. So you're only updating things one time as you go. So now what we're going to do is actually take a look at the website, because Backstage is also a website builder. So Action Coach UK, they had to build a tailor-made website every single year for their new event. What you can do in Backstage is actually build a website that's going to be attached to all of your event information. So you're not having to consistently be in touch with like a designer or anything like that. So here we have an example Backstage page. It's made for this e-trade show 2025. This is how easy it is to edit. So if we go into the editor in Backstage, and we click to edit this website, you'll see that the editor window looks pretty much the exact same as the live website. And that's done for a purpose. That's done so that when you're editing the website, you can already kind of see, hey, this is how it's going to appear once I edit it. And then to edit any of these elements, it's really easy. You simply just click in and change the date, just like you would type on a word processor. And then you can change the elements of the website, and then republish. And the website would be updated if I had actually made a change. With ticketing is another huge feature of Zoho Backstage. So there's a lot of event organizers like Action Coach who use a third-party source, at least a third-party relative to Zoho, to manage their ticketing. That's going to make your job a lot more difficult than when you use that Backstage, because all that information is going to have to be pushed from your ticketing software to whatever software you use for the event. Hopefully, you can set up an integration so all that data is moved. But if you can't, what's going to end up happening is you're going to manually export and then manually import and have to map all the fields appropriately. That ends up taking a lot of time. We've had to do that a lot for just random manual processes in our jobs over the years, or at least I have. And I hate doing it every single time. And so, what you can do in Backstage is you simply run the ticketing all from one location. So, we'll go into the ticketing here. Actually, we'll run it on the website. So, here's what it would look like in the demo. As you can see in our demo website, we're selling workshop tickets, but we have multiple different ticket types. And all of these are approval required. So what that means is when someone asks to purchase a ticket, a notification is sent to the event organizer to say, hey, someone wants to buy this ticket. They haven't been charged yet, but someone wants to buy this ticket. Once you approve them, the person trying to buy will receive an email notification saying, hey, you can go ahead and purchase this ticket. So we have a bunch of different ticket classes. The ticket classes are an important note because not all events just sell the one. Like you guys all came to Zoholics. We had workshop tickets that you could purchase. We had VIP tickets that you could purchase. We had group of 3 tickets, which would give you a discount if you purchased 3 or more. So that actually takes a little more logic, forcing people to buy at least 3. All of this stuff can be configured in the different types of ticket classes. So, to highlight your question further, all of these are marked as approval required. But if we went into the back end and edited these, we wouldn't have to have these as approval required. We would move down somewhere in this editing window and change that. We can also mess with the visibility as well. So some people like to have their tickets that once they're sold out, it shows that they're sold out. That kind of incites some urgency with people on buying other tickets. But sometimes people want sold out tickets to not show up at all. So what you can do is configure that to change it to whatever your preferences may be. Another way to configure this was you would go onto your actual website designer and simply hide the CTA so no one can actually go on and click anything. That kind of makes your website just like an inert piece of content on the internet, but you could do that still. So we'll look at the team now. So the team is where you're managing all of your event members. This is a really cool feature, especially when you look at it in the under the umbrella of Zoho One. There's a lot of things in Backstage that make event management super easy, but when you bring in some of the other tools in Zoho One, it makes the power and the ease of use of Backstage like tenfold. So within the team member section, what you can do is give everyone access. You can allocate or you can partition who's allowed to access what parts of the website. So instead of having one person coordinate everyone's user profile, so they have to reach out to everyone and say, hey, what's your description, what's your job title, can you send me a headshot that works? You can just give people permissions and they can take care of that for themselves. So you're not having that back and forth of getting all their information and then getting a headshot from them that looks terrible and then having to find one on the internet or whatever. That's some of the stuff that we've dealt with in the past, and Backstage has addressed that issue. When you're talking about integrations between applications, that's what really brings out the power of Zoho in general, is data passing from one application to another. So anytime we can take data from one application and have it seamlessly move to another, that's things that a lot of other companies cannot do because their software wasn't built to work with other pieces of software. So that same thing that I just talked about with the team, with the event members, you can do with speakers as well. So if you have speakers from people who aren't in your company. Earlier, we had these customer panel members. You can give them like portal access. So even though they're not in your organization, they can still access and update their speaker profile. So you're not, again, having that back and forth of reaching out to someone from a different company and emailing them and asking, hey, what's your description? Things like that. Yeah. Another really important feature with Backstage. One of the difficult things about events is running promotions for these events, running email promotions, running social media promotions, things like that. You can actually manage all of your promotional materials from within Backstage. So when I talk about this being like a full-fledged event management solution, it really is, because we're taking in all the promotions for it. We're taking in the website building, and then we're actually running the event through Backstage. And then we can even send like post-event emails, surveys, things like that. For our circumstance here with Zoholics, once this is over, we already have emails configured that are scheduled, that right at the end of the event happens, you're all going to receive an email with like the slides, and all of that is done through Backstage. We're not using an email marketing tool for that. It can all be done through Backstage. So you can schedule emails, you can automate emails. There's also a variety of pre-configured automated emails as well that are already filled out with their own templates. So if someone comes in and registers for an event, you can have a pre-configured email made by Backstage, say, hey, thank you for registering. Here's all the details of your ticket. Please show this when you actually show up for the event. So you're not actually having to configure any of this stuff from within Backstage. We do have a WhatsApp configuration. I know WhatsApp is not the most popular application here, but it is growing. It's growing in use a lot. I remember, I think like 3 years ago, anytime someone would talk to me about WhatsApp, I thought they were just probably scamming me. But now that's not the case anymore. And that's definitely not the case in India. So that's as far as we'll go with the actual live demonstration. What I want to talk about now is some other features that are just easier to show in screenshots. This is a bottleneck. Typically at events, the big bottleneck at events is usually the check-in. Check-in is always pretty difficult. It takes a long time to check people in. You usually have a line at the beginning of your event. Typically, badge printing, checking in is a difficult part of all events, and first impressions at events matter. When someone walks into their event or you're into your event at 8 a.m., they might be tired, they might already be annoyed, but they're still slightly excited to go to a session, learn, and then they end up standing in line for 20 minutes and their lower back starts to hurt like mine's hurting right now. And then it just gets in a bad mood. And once that cascading effect happens, there's no bringing them back. So what you need to do is kind of optimize this check-in process, and we can do that within Backstage using our badge builder, using our touchless check-in, using our kiosk features. So within Backstage, you can build all of your badges so you can put your branding on it. You can do on-demand printing. So every time someone checked in today, all we had them do is show their QR code and the printer automatically printed it for us without us having to actually check in anyone. We can also do touchless check-in. Touchless check-in is essentially like a kiosk. It's a self-service kiosk. Someone walks up to the registration area, just check in, get their printed badge. They can grab their lanyard off a shelf or something, and then they can be on their way. No human interaction required. Another cool thing about this is actually we have AI facial recognition software. So if you're hosting an event where you know everyone who's coming, maybe it's a small intimate event, maybe it's like a really high level enterprise event where you've inputted all of the registrants' headshots in there. When you put their headshot in there, AI will recognize their face and then give them a check-in, or will check them in. It's actually almost kind of spooky. It's kind of like the facial recognition at TSA. Like you'll go back, you'll go fly, and then maybe you won't fly for another 10 years and it will still recognize you even though you look way older and you lost all your hair and you're bald now. Like the same thing will happen in Backstage. Zones. You can also offer zones. I kind of mentioned this with the different types of tickets. Zones are to partition people and to segregate people. So if you have specific VIP sections, that's only for the really, really important people. You can have sections for specific workshop events, things like that. For exhibitors, Action Coach would have had trouble selling exhibitor and sponsorship space because when they would go and call someone and say, hey, we're selling this specific space, it's right near the lunch area, so it's going to get a lot of foot traffic. Someone might ask, hey, well, can you give me like a rendering, or can you describe it? Tell me what I'm buying. It's hard to sell something when people don't know what they're buying. And so what people used to have to do a long time ago was they would draw up a floor plan, or they would get it from the venue. But what you can do now within Backstage is actually design the floor plan of your venue and then host that on your page or send that out to an exhibitor or a sponsor so they know what they're purchasing. They know where their booth's going to be. They can visualize it a little bit easier, and it makes it a little easier to sell them on something. So this is what the floor planner builder would look like. This is kind of like a little rudimentary GIF to show you how it would work. You simply drag and drop to build these things. But this is like a year old now, so it can actually get even more complex than this. Now we can add colors. Now we can add different types of shapes, so you can really, lay out a bunch of different aspects of your venue. Exhibitor management. Once someone has actually purchased, they all get their own exhibitor space, which is just like the event agenda, just like the speaker and like attendee space that I mentioned earlier, where exhibitors can go in through their own exhibitor portal and they can actually update all the information for their exhibits. So they can update their branding, they can give you their logo, they can say who's going to show up, they can give you the description. Again, you're just eliminating that back and forth with all of your exhibitors. And so with lead capture, we don't have to be passing around business cards anymore. We can simply have a QR code on name tags, and then exhibitors can simply scan you. And we don't have to go into like that trade show that has, the fishbowl on their table that everyone's throwing business cards into. That's a little outdated. And at tech conferences, we typically don't do that anymore. For AI, we have AI capabilities throughout Backstage now as well, and I'm sure they're just going to continue to grow. We have AI powered matchmaking. So if we have all of our attendee profiles in our Backstage page, what'll happen is the AI will go in. It will like parse through the description that they put in. It will like pull out keywords and say, and take a look at what these people are looking for. So if you have someone who's looking for networking and wants to grow their marketing, and then you have someone else who's talking about networking and wants to elaborate on their marketing activities, AI matchmaking will bring these people together so you can skip the small talk. You can talk to people less out there and just get right to the brass tacks. Gamification hopefully tries to engage people and entices them to scan other people's lead badges, watch sessions, check into sessions, fill out surveys, things like that. So what you can do with gamification, you can set like contests or something to coincide with this gamification. So whoever racks up the most points, meaning whoever scans the most badges and whoever does all of these other interactions, they can win a prize based off of this gamification. And it's a really easy way to get people more involved with your event. And then the last thing, I hope something that you guys are all using for at least on your laptop or on your phones, is we have an event app. We have an event app for organizers and we have an event app for attendees. They're both going to be different. They're going to have different functionality. So you as the attendees would hopefully have the attendee event app where you're able to see a map of the venue. You're able to scan other people's badges. You're able to bookmark events so that you can figure out which ones you want to go to and schedule your route throughout the show. I think this is the last thing that I'll be discussing, but integrations with Backstage. Integrations really extend the capabilities of Backstage and really all the other applications within the Zoho ecosystem. Within Backstage, you can integrate with Zoho PageSense. Zoho PageSense is our customer. It's not our customer. It's our conversion rate optimization tool. And so what PageSense allows you to do is you'll take a little bit of snippet of code, you'll put it onto your event website, and then you can see how people are engaging with your event website. So you can see where they're clicking, you can see how much attention they're paying to certain features, and then with the insights that you've gained from those reports, you can optimize your site. You can also integrate Sales IQ to Backstage. So Sales IQ is our live chatbot. So we actually have this on our Zoholics page. Zoholics page at the bottom right has that little chatbot where you can get assistance. You can ask the Sales IQ chatbot questions and it'll give you canned responses. It'll have a little AI feature in there. If you're asking complicated questions, you can use it and it will hopefully give you good support tools. You can, of course, integrate with CRM. Every time someone registers, all that information can be moved into the CRM and you can tell whether they've attended or whether they just registered, and then you can follow up with them appropriately. And you'll see that all in your CRM record. We're actually adding more functionality as well. So we'll get specific modules for different events in the CRM. Here's what that CRM would look like. We can see that the event registrations are successfully synced. And then we can see that campaign. This is the campaigns module. This will be changed to a different module name in the CRM once the update is pushed. But right now we can see in the campaigns module, we can see the different conventions or events that people have visited. And then finally, automation. There are automation capabilities in Backstage as well. So you can trigger different workflows to happen. If someone signs up for a ticket, you can have them receive an email if they sign up for a ticket. You can have them notify you via click or via a different service if they edit their ticket in any way. You can have them push to CRM right when they've checked in. These are some really simple automations that we have here in the screenshot, but there's a bunch of different things you can do. And then the last thing was accessibility. Accessibility is something that should be near and dear to everyone's heart. Everyone should have the same capabilities to access all of our websites, no matter what race, creed, disability that they may have. And so, with this new accessibility feature within Backstage, you can go into your Backstage settings. And once you configure these, you'll see this little button here on the right. And you have a bunch of different accessibility options for people who are hearing impaired, mobility impaired, etc. And that's all I have for you guys.